Hello everybody. Today we're going to talk a little bit about queues with objects instead of just your basic standard integer or string or anything like that. As a matter of fact, we're going to take a queue that I put together and make it work for an object. Actually, there's a couple things I noticed compared to the last queue that I've discussed. In the last queue, what we did was, let's go to Paint and explain how a normal queue would work in a particular language. Now, a normal queue would look a little something like this, so to speak. Let's just do it like this. It's kind of almost a circle when you look at how it kind of works. Let's see, there we go. I'll just make a couple of little examples so everybody can kind of follow. So let's say I make a queue of size 5 or something or whatever. Normally when we use an array when we're building these from scratch, just so you can learn how they work. Obviously, if you are you want to actually use a queue somewhere, in a program, you just use the built-in structures. There's no reason to reinvent it. But in data structures, we want to know how those work. So in order to know how those work, we build them from scratch. Now how it usually works is this. We have a nice little, this is, let's do this instead. That would be, 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4, right? This is how an array is usually kind of illustrated. Now if this was a stack, we could, just flip this thing upside down, and then just simply, 0 is the bottom, 1, then 2, then 3, then 4 is the top, and then I remove the top and work my way down. It's pretty easy programming. For a queue, however, the problem with the queue is something comes into the queue, and then it needs to come out of the queue. And we usually keep track of that by, this being the front, and then whatever the back is pointing to. So if something comes into the queue here, and then something comes into the queue here, this is now the back, that's now the front. But when I take something out, for example, if I just get rid of that, now that's the front. So I have to move this thing down. And now that's the back. And if something else gets added, well, now that's the back instead. So generally how this works is just like this, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. We essentially use modulus. So, percentage. If I said 10% 5, for example, well, that's going to give me, it's going to subtract 5 from 10 every single time, and whatever's left over is what I get. It gives me the remainder, 0. So we use this to figure out, where we need to go in this. So if I fill up this thing, I put something in, I've taken it out, we put our front here, we get a couple of extra things in here. Let's click off of that real quick. We get, I don't know, 11 or 12 or whatever we want to put in here or anything like that. Now I want to put something else in there, but the problem is my array is full. I can't do that. So what we'll do is use that little percentage. So I know I'll check to see if the size is full. If it's 4, I know the next size is going to be back at 0. So now this will be the back. That's how a standard array works. Now with Python, you can create them as arrays and treat them that way. But the standard thing that we program actually is a list. And a list have operations like append, and you can insert in specific places. You can remove from specific places, but you can also delete a very specified thing too. An array in, let's say, Java or C++, that would be the array. It's that size. It doesn't change. I can't make it bigger. I can't make it smaller. It is that size. But on a list, oh, even in other languages, but especially in Python, that list, boom, if I need it to put something in, I put it in. If I need to put another thing in, I add another one to the bottom. If I need more, then I just add that to the bottom. If I don't want this first one, in case of a queue, the first one comes out, right? Well, then I just remove that first one. And now that's the front. In fact, that would be spot 0. That would be spot 1, and it would just grow however I need it to grow. So in my first example, this is, after this video, my first semester teaching Python converting over to Java. I was treating everything pretty much the same as I would Java. But that's not actually how the list works. So what we're going to do is I'm going to adjust this a little bit so it's not as wonky. And hopefully we'll be able to use this queue, slightly adapted, to work with this object that I created here, this widget. So I created a widget. At this point, it should be a stack version of this as well, but it just simply has a number on it. That's it. It's nothing fancy. We could get super fancy if we wanted to, but that's enough for now. Now, if I'm going to use the list the way it works, I probably don't necessarily need this back because the last thing in the list is going to be the back. And I don't necessarily need a front, really, actually, in this particular rendition, because the 0 location is going to be the front. But I'm going to leave them there for now, because that's what I had in the previous one. We just might not use them, so we'll see. So we'll come down here in queue, and the goal of this is to know how a queue and a stack work in the first place. So let's see. We got a widget. Now, if this was Java, my list would be a specific thing. It would be, a list of integers, a list of strings. But in Python, it's just a list, and whatever I put into it goes into it. So I don't really have to change anything there. Now, we go here, and we take a little check. I've got, my queue is full, in this case. So if the size is equal to the max size, well, the queue's full. I can't put anything else in there. If the size is 0, meaning my queue is empty, well, then I simply just put my item in there. And I can't really say item, per se. It's going to be, let's see, item.number. Or I could make a function up here to get number, which would be a little bit better, honestly. But as long as it works for what I'm doing here, I'll just keep it like that. So I'm just going to print whatever the number is. So we'll append it, which we're already doing, and that just puts it at the end of the list. And right now the list is empty. Now if I wanted the list to be a specific size, I could come up here and do that. Now I have 5 empty items in the list, but I can just leave it like that for now. There is a max size for this, and if this was an array, I would just make it that size at the start. In this, I can just check and make sure it doesn't go beyond that size using this variable to keep track of that. So, all right, so else, that means it's not full, it's not empty. I just need to put it in the back. So I'll put the item.number in the back. And I was using this to determine the back right here, and then I was inserting specifically in that location. And doing that was exactly how the Paint version I explained was working. So I think I should be able to change this to just self.append, and then just like I did previously, or self.list.append, and then just append my item. That'll put it at the end of the list. So the only thing I'm ever going to remove is the very first item. That's it. The very first item is the beginning of the list. I remove it. The next thing becomes the very first item. So if this works, then we should have a pretty easy, simple queue with these lists here. So that's all I have to do. Size goes up, size goes up. Looks like it's okay. We dequeue. Now, and the item is going to be whatever I want it to be, so it can even be this widget if I want it to be. In the previous version, it was simply, an integer or string or something like that. So, all right, dequeue takes something out of my queue. In queue puts something in. So I want to take things out. The first question is, well, if it's empty, it means my size is 0, then there's nothing to take out. So I just print a little message. Now, what we did here is I take my list and I take the front value and I copy it into this little value here. Now, the front value in my list, the way it's made right now, is just simply 0. It's the first item. And then delete will delete that specific item in that specific location. So I can just, again, remove the first item. And I want to remove dot number. So I can see the number that's getting removed. And then I adjust the front. I don't really need to adjust the front, I think. So since we're not using it for what we're doing. Now this is set to return our value, and that's for when I take something out of my queue, I can save it somewhere else if I need to. Check things if I need to. All right, and then we have display. Now, display, I believe, was a little wonky in my previous program. Probably just need to look at it a little closer and see what's wrong with it. But all I need to do for this is, let's see, make a couple of adjustments. Instead of using front, I just need to start at the beginning. So and then I don't technically need that, if that's the case. I can just use I. It's going to be 0 to whatever the size is. So, and I think I could probably, instead of using I in range, I think I can just say, while it's in that collection, but we'll just leave this as it is right now. See how that rolls. Now, I need to create a couple of widgets. And when I create a widget, I just say, blah, blah, blah as a widget and whatever number I want to put into there. So I'll just say W1 equals widget, and we'll just give it a number, I don't know, 10 or something. W2 equals widget. We'll try a couple of things here, 20. W3 equals widget of 30. We'll just keep going. I'll make 6 of these. So let's save a little bit of time. That'll be 4, that'll be 5, that'll be 6. We'll just up those. Actually, let's make 7. We'll test a couple of different things here. Okay, so I made the widgets. Now I just need to in-queue them. Queue is the name of my queue. In queue. And I can say widget 1. And hopefully that displays my widget. Let's give it a test before we start doing anything else. All right, display. Oh, I'm printing the list I, but not the number, so I need to change that. All right, well, I have a 10 in my queue. Okay, perfect. So let's do the same thing for the rest. If I do this a couple of times, boop, and that's not in the right spot. Now we'll go 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, and that should be too full. So let's see what it says. All right, the queue is full when I tried to put it in, so it stopped it. Okay, that's good. And there's my queue. Looks like it's working so far. Now, the difficulty with queues, particularly with the way we programmed it before, is when we take things out. That circle that we had earlier, it makes it kind of, I don't know, funky where you start back. If you mess up any of the percentage stuff or, where the front and the back is, all of a sudden you end up with a null area or something. So let's see if this works out for us. I'm going to move you down some. There we go. I'm going to dequeue a few things. Q dot dequeue. And I could just save this into a value if I wanted to. Item equals, if I wanted to take it out. I don't have to. Q dot dequeue. And then I'll enqueue6, enqueue7. And we'll see if this looks like what it's supposed to. 7. There we go. I'll run it. And I crashed. Huzzah. Let's see what our problem is. Okay. We removed 10 and 20 from the queue. That's what it says. We put 70 at the end of the line. And then it says, oh, I don't have a W7. Well, that would certainly crash it, I suppose. So let's... I thought I made a 7, did I not? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, I made 2 6s. That's why. Nobody called me on that. What's going on here? Let's try running it again with proper setup here. Okay, so if I did this correctly, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 should be in there. I take off the 10 and 20. My queue should say 30, 40, 50, 60, 70. Voila. So now I put widgets in a queue here. Just very simple, very quick. And I didn't necessarily need any of the fancy math I was doing because we're using a list instead of an array. If we were using an array, then what I was doing here would 100% be necessary because my background structure doesn't grow and shrink as the thing goes. Now, of course, you notice it grows to a certain extent. It doesn't grow infinitely because I've got this set size here. The max size prevents it from going that big. So once it's the max size, it won't allow anything else to go in. So that is just a quick rundown on how you would put items, objects, and things like that into a queue, and make a few little adjustments here and there using the Python's list instead of arrays. If you have any questions or any issues, please let me know.